When I first started my business in 2008, July, about 5 months before the big stock market crash, in October of '08, um, you saw my business plan, but what I don't read many books. I'm not a book reader, but I read something on the internet about in time when times are tough, economy is tough, keep marketing, whether it's internet marketing, blast emails. So 2008 through the middle of like end of 2009, we did a lot of blast emails to exhibitor lists. We did a lot of internet advertising because the theory was when the recession breaks, you're going to be on top of mind. And I don't know if it really happened. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but like in 2011, 2012, when things started getting better, it was crazy how many leads we started generating. So um, that was one of the things we continued our marketing efforts through a recession.
Phil Zamloot is a relentless relationship builder with one motto: be different. In 2008, with a business plan handwritten on yellow legal paper, Phil founded Metro Exhibits, setting out to create an exhibiting company that prioritizes customer service and relationships above all else. His vision included investing in in-house production to offer unmatched flexibility and customization. Within 12 years, Metro expanded to 3 locations across the country with over 100 skilled staff and craftsmen. When the pandemic shut down trade shows, Phil led Metro to pivot, supplying essentials like plexiglass dividers, launching promotional programs for remote teams, and designing luxury interiors and custom signage. In 2020, he also ventured into the world of sports collectibles, founding the World of Wax Sports card store in Randolph, New Jersey, a venture fueled by Phil's love of sports and retail. Phil doesn't believe in downtime. When he's not watching his sons Phil and Matt play sports or relaxing poolside with his dog Sonny, you might find him enjoying a cigar or hitting the greens at Trump National Golf Club. Phil's a leader who thrives on building connections and seizing opportunities, no matter the challenge. Let's unravel the fingerprints on success of Phil Zamloot. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us and welcome to another episode of Fingerprints on Success. Today, I'm joined by Phil Zamloot, who is the founder of Metro Exhibits. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you having me. And I just want to say congratulations to you because I've known your firm for a long time as Mandelbaum Salzburg. So congrats for getting your name up there.
Oh, thank
Very
you.
impressive.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate that very much, Phil. Phil, so your business is unique, and full disclosure, our firm has used your company many, many times. And it's pretty remarkable the service and kind of what you created. So I think where I'd love to start is if you could share with our listeners a little bit about your story about what does Metro Exhibits do, and how did you come into this area of business and develop your company?
Yeah, so Metro Exhibits, we're a full service trade show exhibit company. So any company like your company goes to these trade shows, they exhibit, they set up these exhibits, they sell to the attendees. We sell the exhibits, rent the exhibits, but not only that, we provide all the services that go along with it. So we provide the shipping, the on-site labor, furniture, carpet. We print all the graphics in-house. I'm here in our Pine Brook facility, New Jersey. We have 3 facilities across the country: New Jersey, Orlando, and Vegas. So in business since 2008. I was working for another company. I was in the insurance industry right out of college. Went into pharmaceutical sales for about 7 years. Then I worked for a competitor in the trade show industry for about 3 years. I was a sales guy. Worked out a deal with the owner. Left, started my own business in 2008. And almost 17 years later, we're still standing. I don't know how, but we're still standing.
Well, the fact that you have now offices and locations in 3 different states, I think you guys are more than just standing. So was it the kind of thing that when you were working in the industry in sales, did you have a vision, in terms of like you saw how that company was being run and maybe had an idea on how you might be able to kind of build a little bit different type of mousetrap? What was your vision for starting your own business?
Yeah, so I was there for almost 3 years, and the owner, they were partners. I was friends with them prior, but the way it was run, we didn't see eye to eye. I'm a sales guy at heart. I don't have many strengths. I'm a sales guy. I can network. I can talk to people. I'm not a book reader. I don't look at charts. I'm not analytical. I'm a sales guy, I can network. So I knew starting my own business, I knew a couple of the big clients who had great relationships would come with me. In fact, my business plan, you can't see it, but my business plan was on a yellow piece of paper. And it's like it's common sense. I believe in common sense. On the left, it was all the expenses. On the right, all my potential clients and how much profit. And to be honest with you, my expenses came out to 62,480 a month, and I was going to bring in about 60,000 a month profit. So that's where I started. I knew I could market, and I started with if I could just break even for the first year, I'll be okay. And the first year, we more than broke even. And listen, I don't claim to be. I went to a college, Upsala College, that is now bankrupt. But I did have a 2.3 grade point average, so I was very. My point is, I'm not a scholar. I'm street smart. I have a lot of common sense, and I was able to build a business around that. And that's
Yeah.
what I preach. Like I have two boys, 17, and my one's getting ready to go to college. And like when I grew up in Belleville, middle income neighborhood, every one of my friends went to Montclair State, Kane, Rutgers, Newark. Some went to some small Pennsylvania schools. The kids nowadays, Ole Miss, Alabama, James Madison, Penn State. It's all these big schools. And I tell my son all the time, Phil, when I interview people, I'll look where they went to college, but I'm not going to say, oh, wow, Ole Miss or Auburn or I look at the kid, I look at their personality, I look at the whole picture. College degree, if they have one, but I look more at the kid. I look at the family is very important. I always look to the parents to see how their parents are. I think that's very important in today's society.
Well, you mentioned the fact that at heart you're a sales guy with common sense. But I think, when you look at the size of the business you've built, a very successful business, um, there's definitely more to it than that. And I think a lot of people talk about unique abilities, and there's been a lot written on this issue about the great entrepreneurs know what they're good at, and understand the areas that either they're not good at or they don't like. And have you built a team that's helped you deal with the things that you either think you're not great at or the things that you don't really like to do?
Yeah, that's a good point, Bill. We built a very good team. We have about just under 100 employees. I like to say that I surround myself with good people. Like I said, I think I'm a pretty good sales guy. I like to network. I like to talk to people. I like to take clients out golfing, that kind of thing. But when it comes to like looking at spreadsheets, we have meetings after meetings here, and I think a lot of corporations do. I'm not crazy about meetings, but the key is to surround yourself with good people. And that's what I've done for the last 17 years. Listen, people come and go. You make a lot of mistakes. Listen, being an entrepreneur, I don't know if you're born with the entrepreneur mindset or you develop it, but a lot of people look at you and say, "Well, he owns a business. He must be rich. He must be." There's a lot that goes in, a lot of pros and cons. Hopefully, there's more pros and cons. But as you know, Bill, it's not easy being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. When you look back on the journey to success, are there, moments in time where you say like, this was a mistake, or if I could go back and do it all over again, this is what I wouldn't have done, or, like advising kind of like yourself, from 15 years ago, today, if you were giving advice to yourself 15 years ago, what would you tell yourself not to do?
Yeah, two things. Number one, so our core business here is building trade show exhibits. But with that, we use vendors to provide the third party shipping to the venue. We use third party labor companies to set up the booths. So in the last 10, 12 years, I've tried to start a shipping company, thinking thinking instead of paying a shipper $1,000, my cost will be 400. But the things you don't think about are the workers' comp. If the trucks break down, my point here, the first big point is focus on your business. It's easy to say I could start a labor company, I could start a shipping. I started at one point a corrugated cardboard, like anything cardboard, these point of purchase displays. We started a company with a couple of guys down in Atlanta. Total mistake. We lost our entire investment because we're so busy with our trade show exhibits. Focus on that. So I made a couple of mistakes that was so my first thing would be focus on your core business. Unless you have a unless you have a solid plan and solid people in place to start another subdivision of your business, I would say no. So focus on your business, number one. Number two, if you do go into business or start a new business, I think a huge key is to have the other, if you have partners or investors, make sure they have skin in the game.
Mm.
Because I started two businesses specifically where the other parties had no skin in the game. Metro Exhibits invested all the money. They were, and then everybody has all contacts. I'm going to bring this, I'm going to bring that. Whatever they say, divide it by 25 because it never comes true. And we lost two major investments doing that. So any business I go into moving forward, that other party, or if there's a partner, they're going to have skin in the game. So they would be my two big things.
Yeah, I think that's the skin in the game piece is a huge point because if someone has nothing to lose, it's very easy for them when, on the first cloudy or rainy day when things aren't going well, it's very easy for them to pick up their marbles and go play elsewhere. But, when you've got a cash investment or you've signed on the dotted line for a guarantee with a bank or something like that, not so easy. And if your partners can abandon you, you get left holding the bag. So
Absolutely.
I think that's great advice for our entrepreneurs. On the flip side of things, what are some things that when you think about it that you did, whether it was just like a state of mind you had or ideas or philosophies where you look back over to 15 years and you say, these are the things that because we did these things, this made us more successful. Like,
so when I first started my business in 2008, July, about 5 months before the big stock market crash, in October of '08, um, you saw my business plan, but what I don't read many books. I'm not a book reader, but I read something on the internet about in time when times are tough, economy is tough, keep marketing, whether it's internet marketing, blast emails. So 2008 through the middle of like end of 2009, we did a lot of blast emails to exhibitor lists. We did a lot of internet advertising because the theory was when the recession breaks, you're going to be on top of mind. And I don't know if it really happened. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but like in 2011, 2012, when things started getting better, it was crazy how many leads we started generating. So that was one of the things we continued our marketing efforts through a recession. My second thing is my big philosophy is, and I tell my kids, they're getting tired of me here, it's me saying it, but be different. Don't do what everybody else does, especially if you're in sales. And a good example is we have many competitors in the exhibit industry. You go on LinkedIn, they'll show you their exhibit from the ABC show, and it's a static image of a booth, boring. They'll get one comment, two likes. I either want to do video or I'll go in our warehouse and show the booth going up here first because before we ship any booth out, we set it up here first. So I like to add commentary. We joke around with our employees, and I get a lot of hits on LinkedIn. I'm not bragging, but my posts do much better than our competitors because it's different, it's unique. I believe in being different, and one of the things we did back in 2015, um, being in the New York area, we hired two former New York Giants, Otis Anderson, Super Bowl MVP running back, and Lawrence
mhm.
Taylor, arguably the greatest defensive player of all time. So they work for us. They're on our payroll. And people say, why do you do it? The reason why I did it differentiates us. So they will get on phone calls. They both have LinkedIn profiles. We try to generate business through their LinkedIn profiles. And they're very good guys. When we have big clients come into the office, we bring them in, they sign autographs, they take pictures with the clients, especially if you have that New York local client who loves the Giants, it's a no-brainer. So no other exhibit company does that. They're on our payroll, and it started in 2015. I hired an athlete. It didn't work out so well. But our first athlete was in 2015, running back in the NFL. Um, and then LT and OJ a couple of years later. So I believe in doing things different, and that's what sets you apart. Because I like the expression "being average sucks," and it's true. Hey, you're not average. You're a
Yeah.
partner in a huge law firm, so I know you're above average, Bill.
Yeah.
Your wife may not think so, but I think you are.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there's a list of people who don't think who would say the opposite. Maybe you're probably right. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that too, because sometimes being different requires you to be, to really step out of the box. Other times, being different, I tell this to a lot of the younger attorneys that are kind of coming up in our organization. Sometimes being different is just doing the simple things really well, because so many people fail
Yeah,
to do like in sports, we talk about fundamentals, right? In football, it's blocking and tackling. In
yeah.
baseball, it's, catching and throwing, look the ball into the glove,
Hitting
right?
the cutoff, man. Yeah,
Right, the basics. And so providing really great service and being a great communicator and getting back to people promptly, and making sure that bills are fair and appropriate, and just like common sense things that if you were the consumer that you would want to receive. There's so many people and so many businesses that they don't do that, and then they can't understand why they're not doing well.
yeah,
And the irony is, just by doing the fundamentals and doing them really well, you kind of immediately distinguish yourself before you even add in Hall of Fame athletes and unique marketing and things like that. You've already started to distinguish yourself. Um, so
absolutely.
as you built the company, um, tell me a little bit about, mentors that maybe you had along the way. Like, were there people, whether in your personal life or in business, who took you under their wing and were helpful to you along the journey?
I'll be honest with you, Bill. I always worked for somebody up until 2008, insurance, pharmaceutical, and another exhibit company. I didn't really have a mentor, so to speak, but when I started my business, it happened so quick. I did my business, but I don't really have a specific mentor. But I could tell you this: my parents, incredible, incredible people. Like my father, I get a little.
No, I
My
I,
father was
I get the
incredible.
same way.
Woo! He um he passed 2 years ago.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I can't even talk about it. It's crazy. But he taught me, like, he was in the insurance business. He was a marketing rep for an insurance company. He would go to different insurance companies. He worked for a company. He would try to get that insurance agency to place, if somebody came in and needed a homeowner's policy, he would try to convince them to use his company to place the homeowners. He was a marketing guy, marketing slash sales. Um, could talk to anybody, treats everybody with respect. He taught us respect, like manners. I have three brothers and a sister. They're my siblings. They're all very respectful. We were taught, you go into somebody's house when we were younger, don't go into the basement and play with the other kids. Go say hello to all your aunts and uncles, give them a kiss. It was all
Right.
about respect, honesty. But my father was big with work ethic. We had paper routes when we were 10 years old. We shoveled every one of our neighbors' snow at 6:30 in the morning, because we had about four neighbors who were probably 70 plus who couldn't do it. He was all about respect, always doing the right thing. And my mother was a homemaker, but and she was kind of like in La La Land, and we used to like take advantage. He would go away for a couple of days, and we'd go out during the week, which we weren't supposed to. My father he was an incredible guy that taught his kids work ethic, respect. Um, and here's a guy, right? Amazing. He retired, let's say 20 years ago. He never made more than probably 65,000 a year, but me and my mother never worked. Me, my three brothers, and my sister, we all went to college. Not one debt, not one. I never made a college debt payment. I don't know how he did it. When he first got married, he worked three jobs. He did whatever it took. We didn't listen. Now I go out to eat 3, 4 nights a week. We were lucky if it was Saturday night going to the Plank restaurant for hamburgers and hot dogs in Belleville. He knew how to manage his money. He was an incredible. So I don't have a specific business mentor. My mentors were my parents growing up. And I could tell you, from like age 14 to 22, I would argue with my father. Why can't I go out during the week? Why can't I wear sweatpants to high school? But then as we got old, I respected and understood what he was trying to do. And now I have the same, my older son thinks I don't know anything. He knows everything, but it's the same cycle. And I would say my mentors are my parents.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's really mentorship on life, which translates into business. And, I don't mind sharing with you that, now, we've had quite a few episodes of our show. And I would say, if I had to guess roughly, probably 75% of the people that come on the show, when they talk about influential people in their lives and mentors, it's almost universally they had a huge and positive impact from their parents and a great relationship with their parents. So I don't know if it's scientific or not, and maybe politically incorrect. I don't know, but at the end of the day, there just seems to be such an incredible connection between, like, strong family life and good parenting and parents who really set great examples that influence a lot of very successful people.
And it makes
And
sense. But you see what you just said? If that's politically incorrect, there's something wrong with society. People raving about their parents. Isn't that crazy?
right.
This world is so
No,
different now.
that's not what I meant. That part's not
No.
politically
Oh,
incorrect.
okay. I'm sorry. I'm
It's
sorry.
suggesting, and I'm not, and by the way, I don't agree with this comment, but it's the suggestion that, unless you had really good
Yeah.
parents and family
Yeah.
life, it's hard to be successful. That would be the part that
Right.
is that might be unpopular. But I'm just saying, from this show and from the interviews that we've conducted, and from the, you know, well over probably 2,000 entrepreneurs that I've represented in my 26 years as a lawyer to business owners, um, there just seems to be such a massive connection between, you know, positive, influential parents and family life that translated into kind of the roots of success for a lot of people. Um, so I'm convinced that there's a major connection. And by the way, one of the reasons why I named the show Fingerprints on Success was the fact that I was once talking about my father, who I'm in the process of writing a book about right now, um, who as I kept reflecting on my life and success and things that have happened that have been positive in my life, I realized that there were all these lessons that I learned. And I once said to a friend of mine, geez, my dad's fingerprints are all over my success. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden it was like the bell went off, like, hey, let's call the show Fingerprints on Success.
That's
So
awesome.
that's that's how we got to it. So I hear you, and I share, I share those views, frankly. Um, so what, there's a lot going on right now, obviously, in the country. There's changes are happening, and there's a lot on people's minds and all that. From a business standpoint, what are some things that are kind of hot on your mind that you think are, something that business owners should be thinking about right now, that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I think well, like, so since the pandemic hit in 2020, we almost went out of, like, we were probably a month, 2 months away from going out of business. If it
Right, because
wasn't for
trade
those
shows just ended, right? It was like they stopped.
dead, we were one of the biggest industries affected. And if it wasn't for the 2 rounds of PPP loans, we wouldn't be here talking right now. So the hot topic today is post-pandemic is getting people to the office to work. There's a lot of talk about work from home, working remotely. So that's a big challenge I have. And I can tell you this: when I interview particularly young kids, and if one of the questions is what is the work from home policy, I don't care how good they are, they're out. Because if my father ever heard that, he would tell us to get to work early. It's so different now. But the work from home policy is a big thing, and we're my idea is to get everybody back by January 1st. But my human resource department is saying you're going to lose people because there's a lot of competitors offering fully remote work. So I think the work from home is a huge topic right now. And honestly, this diversity, this DEI thing is a huge thing. I think it's fading away a little bit, but And we're very diverse here. We hire all races, religions. We have a good, we bust each other's chops. But I think the DEI in corporate America um, is not a problem, but it's a hot topic. And when I first started my business, my accountant said you should put the company in your wife's name. And I didn't understand why. He said because it would be considered a minority business because it's a woman. And I said I don't want to do that. I own the business. I don't believe in. But nowadays, we probably wouldn't want a few. We would probably want a few more contracts if we were a minority business. So I think those are minority. The DEI, the work from home it's a
Yeah.
problem.
I think, I've talked to a lot of people about the work from home issue. And, I think there's a lot of things that it impacts, right? Like, I think number one, like the culture of a company, like if you're not together and you're not interacting, how, how do you really build a culture not being together? I think that's a very hard thing to do. And I'm sure there's tons of experts out there and people who disagree and will say all the reasons why you can. It's just my own personal experiences. It's very hard to do. And I think that younger professionals suffer the most. If you're a really seasoned professional and you've got clientele and you've already built your relationships over many, many years, and there's really solid relationships, you can probably get away with working remotely or being one of these people who move to the mountains or to
Yeah.
the beach because they have mature friendships and relationships in business and they're just continuing in that sphere. Whereas if you're a young person who's just figuring it out or just learning your craft or trying to like develop your in business, how are you going to do that sitting at your house? And how are you going to learn and be mentored by people who are experienced? And I just think it's very hard to do.
And there's all kinds of studies talking about kids that are staying home. The depression, the alcohol use goes up. Drugs goes up. But also, if you want to get promoted and you're not interacting with your bosses, how do you think you're getting promoted from sitting at home?
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I was asked by a younger attorney, who was interested in being a partner in the firm someday, and they were asking me about the ways that you become a partner. So I gave them uh, what I'll call holistic advice. Part of it was talking about being a great professional and all the things that would go with working hard and creating new clients and all these other things. But then I said, remember something. In our organization, to become a partner, at least 2/3 of the existing partnership has to vote you in.
Yeah.
And if someone has no relationship with you because you don't come to work and you work remotely and you haven't developed a rapport and a friendship and a relationship, it's difficult for someone to say, yeah, I want you to be my partner. I want you to be an owner in the organization when I don't really know you. And,
No
so
doubt.
the advice I rendered was, you know, that the way you advance is through relationships.
Yeah.
Um, Now I understand that you're a very big relationship guy. Um, Tell me a little bit about that. Like how have you gone about building relationships over the years and are they a major influence in the success that your business has had?
Yeah. I'm big with relationships, but I could tell you, like, I belong to I hate even saying the word country club. I belong to a golf course, private golf course, but I'm the kind of guy, like, I have friends who I went to kindergarten with. And I'm still friends with my guy who does my heating and air conditioning, Mike Lepesky. I'm friends with him since kindergarten. Al Best, Armando Nardone, the Sorettos, the Solettis. I'm friends with people that I grew up with. I didn't go to college. I mean, I went to college, but I didn't join a frat. I know a lot of guys that join frats. They get a whole new friend group. They go to country clubs. I go to my golf course. I play golf with some of the guys, but most times I bring guys with me, my friends that I grew up with. I'm all about like loyalty to my friends I grew up with. But developing relationships, I have my only strength, I think, is I have a knack. I know how to talk to people. We go to restaurants. I will talk to anybody in the place. I don't know how to explain it, but and what I tell my kids all the time is selfish and lazy are the two worst traits you could have to me. Selfish meaning you talk about yourself a lot. I always make it about who I'm talking to. How old are your kids? Where are they going to school? I take an interest in the people. I'm very curious. I'm not a know-it-all. That's the other trait that's really big. You don't want to be a know-it-all. Nobody likes a know-it-all. So I'm very curious. I ask a lot of questions. If I go into a new business, I'll ask them how they started. How did you build it? I'm just a very curious person. I take an interest in people, and I just have a I can't explain how I build them, but a good example is the guy who runs our Orlando facility, Trey Sears. He's been our city manager for 10 years in Orlando, runs the entire facility. He was my number one customer when I was at the other exhibit company. He came with me to this company. So he went from being a client to one of my colleagues slash employees, because we built he was my biggest client. I went to every show, 10 a year on the road. Him and his father ran the company. We played golf. We went to dinner. We were at the show when the booth was being built. It's a knack. I don't know if you could teach somebody how to build relationships. I mean, there's some certain things, but I think you're born with it. I think it's inherent. I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, when you talked about being a good listener and being curious about people and talking to all different types of people and engaging, it kind of traces back to what your father and your mother taught you, as you described before, about respect, like, and how much they emphasize respect for other people. Because at the end of the day, when you're curious about people and you actually care about what they have to say, and you're engaging, it's because you're showing people respect, right? And at the end of the day, on some level, maybe it is taught, but it's just, it's ingrained in who you are because it's how you're raised a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Another thing with entrepreneurs, I think there's a common characteristic, and it's my new favorite word that my kids are getting so tired of hearing. The word grit.
Yes.
If you have grit, there's a book, and I don't read books. I started reading a book by Angela Duckworth. Her name is. It's called Grit, and it's grit is passion and perseverance. So it's passion, perseverance, but I add the work ethic factor to that. If you have passion, you persevere, and you have a work ethic, I don't care what college you go to, you can do whatever you want. And the best, there's three people I'm going to name. Grit, Lawrence Taylor. And can I give you a quick story about Lawrence Taylor and
Sure,
Grit?
Of course.
Playing golf, I'm 3 up on him. We're in the 7th hole. I'm 3 up, 3 holes. And we're on a par 3. Hits the ball into the water, barely in the water, but you see the top of the ball. It's in mud. But you got to walk about 6 feet to the ball. And he had white shoes on. He had light colored pants. He was going to get all muddy. If that's me, and I think I have grit, I think there's different levels of grit. I might be in the middle. He walked into the mud. His feet sunk. The caddy held out a golf club so he could hold on in case he fell backward into the water. But I said, LT, you lost the hole. I was on the green, 8 foot for birdie. He's in the mud. I go, LT, forget it. I won the hole. Started cursing at me, walks into the mud, hits a shot. The ball comes out all brown to about 12 feet of the stick. He lips out for par. I missed my putt, but he didn't win the hole. But the fact that he did what he did, and then he had mud all over him. That's the definition of grit. And I don't know if you could teach it. I'm reading this book by Angela Duckworth, and I don't read books. I kind of like skip a lot of pages. I'm trying to get to the part where, can you teach grit? Because I want to know if I could teach my kids grit. I don't think you can, but I think grit is a huge, underused, underestimated word.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of become a little popular also right now because, you probably know the recent history of the Detroit Lions, which were the worst team in the NFL for a really long time. And I think they had an 0-16. They went over, right? Just a few years ago. And Dan Campbell, now of course they're like, top, other than Kansas City Chiefs, they're top in the league. I think they only have one loss. And all they talk about in the interviews and everything is all about grit. They're constantly talking about grit. And that's the persona, the character that he wants his organization to have, right? To just be these never quit, hardworking, kind of like, I use this term in quotes, like that kind of like blue collar football style, right?
Yeah.
And that's, they're just tough, and the results speak for themselves.
And they played
this conversation. I'm sorry, go ahead.
They played Sunday night. They were down 23-7 at the half. They came back and won 26. So there's grit. That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
Dan
Yeah.
Campbell.
Yeah. And look, it's an interesting thing to talk about. I have a very good friend of mine, um, and we both grew up kind of similar, from very humble backgrounds. And we, his was probably even tougher than mine. And he talked about, when you become successful, he talked about giving your kids what you can versus what you should. And he and I have this conversation. I feel like it's constant
Yeah,
about, like, how do you strike a balance between making sure that you don't strip someone, whether, and it could be, it could be your kid, but it could be someone who works for you, it could be anyone.
yeah,
Like, how do you not make sure that you strip them of that, the joy of struggling and
yeah.
scrapping and fighting to reach levels of success in anything you do. That's part of the excitement, the joy of life, business, whatever, is the striving and the working and the achieving of goals that you set for yourself, and trying to continue to constant, never ending improvement, trying to keep taking yourself to the next level, um, and not giving people too much. I don't know,
It's
and making sure they have grit. To your point,
it's so hard. It's a fine line. It's like you want to give your kids a better life, but I grew up in Belleville, New Jersey. I had the best up. My parents didn't have money, but we never wanted for anything. But like with my kids, it's hard. It's like you're trying to tell me that my older son's spending $800 a month on my credit card. That's not normal, Bill.
no, that's
No,
not normal.
you know what I mean.
I know.
It's a fine line. It's hard to. I don't know. Raising kids is probably the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah, it's the one thing that there's no good playbook for sure.
You know,
Um,
Bill, when I had to send my bio over to you,
yeah.
um, and I never had I don't even have a bio, but
Well, Phil, apparently you do, because I have it.
my marketing director just wrote it, and the last line she wrote, when Phil is on Phil's spare time, he enjoys spending time with his wife and kids, and I go, get that out of there right now, because you should write in his spare time. Phil yells at his kids all day. And that's the, and you know what I mean. I don't yell at them, but I try to ingrain into them that you have to work for what you get. Work. I say, guys, I don't care what college you go to. If you have a work ethic and you know how to talk to people, which most of your friends don't, you're going to be 10 steps ahead of every other kid. So I was being facetious by saying
Yeah.
that, but anyway.
Well, listen, not to beat a dead horse, but again, one of the theories, or I should say, mindsets or concepts that comes up in a lot of the interviews that we do on this show are the commonality in work ethic among the most successful entrepreneurs. Um, Very few people come in and talk about how it was easy, or they got lucky, or they happened to be in the right place at the right time. No, everybody talks about the fact that it started from nothing. They worked. They worked 7 days a week. They did whatever they had to do. They were the chief cook and bottle washer, um, and they got there. And look, I think at the end of the day, too, your people also respect, if they know that you've done every job in that company, right? That you've probably built those exhibit booths, you've set them up yourself, you've probably shipped them yourself, you've probably done
Yeah.
every job that your company offers yourself. Um, you know, People respect that when they know that, you know how to do the job because you've done all the jobs to get there.
Yeah. And it's nice, if your parents gave you a head start, either whether you took over the family business or they started you without some money, that's great. But in 2008, I had about $460,000 to my name, and I put it all into Metro Exhibits. You gotta have a little bit of a gambler mentality, and you gotta have a set of what, because my wife was a little nervous. Our first son was a year old. So I said, I know I can do it. I know I could sell. I'm watching the guys I work for. I know I can do. So you gotta have a little gambler mentality. But if you were handed something by your parent, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's a good head start. But
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you should mention that, because it reminds me of a story. My father later in life decided that, he wanted to get involved in investing in real estate. So he had talked to some people who had done it, and he had read a lot of things about it, and he had this idea. And my mother, being very conventional, they had lived in the same house they bought in like 1968 for like $26,000, and they had
My parents too.
they just paid it off.
1967, 26.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like crazy.
they just paid that house off, and my father came home and said, there's a couple of rental properties for sale. There's a house that I think I could renovate. And I was thinking, I looked into it, and we could refinance our house for $160,000 and take all the equity out of it, and then use that money to invest in real estate. And my mother started to cry and scream and say, "Oh my God, you've lost your mind. Are you crazy? We just paid our house off. That's what people dream of." And anyway, somehow they came to, after the dust settled, they came to an agreement, and and he started investing in real estate. And my siblings and I still have some of those rental properties today that are
That's nice.
that are multifamily places that he built. And it started with refinancing a $26,000 house that he bought in 1968. But to your point, that took guts, especially for someone who wasn't formally educated in real estate and just kind of had a dream. And and so you make a great point that entrepreneurship, at some point along the way, it's the art of taking risks, right? You took a risk.
And Bill, I'm impressed. And a lot of people don't know this, but you knew what year and how much your parents paid, which is it's crazy. I believe my parents bought their house in 1967 for $26,000 in Belleville, New Jersey. The crazy thing is, for another $500, 26.5, I think it was, they could have had a house in North Caldwell. So look,
the high rent district.
And then we were looking at the price difference. But for $500, he couldn't swing it. So he stayed in Belleville. But it's crazy how things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have one last question for you, Phil. What are you excited about these days? You've been in business a long time now. You built a great company. You're doing really well. You've got 100 employees. You're growing. What's got you excited every day when you get up and you go to work?
What excites me? Well, because of the pandemic, we had to rebuild it. So we built a nice business till 2020. The pandemic hit. So 2022, end of 2022 is when it started coming back. So we're almost 2 years back. And I actually I like the hustle. I like the challenge of having to, that wasn't my plan to rebuild the business after being in business for 15, whatever it was, 13 years. But I accept the challenge. I'm not sour grapes. The pandemic happened. There's nothing you can do about it. But I like the challenge of having to build it back up again. It's just a little more. It's a little tougher to run a business nowadays. Like I said, because of the work from home. The other big quote is this life work balance, which I get. You want to see your kids' games, I get it. But when you're 23 years old, graduating college, there is no life work balance. How about you work first and then you get the balance later on in life? Everybody wants work. So it's a lot harder to manage people. It's a lot harder with all the laws, and it's just a lot harder. But what I look forward to is rebuilding the business. Hopefully I sell it. And able to retire. Maybe I'll use Mendelbaum Barrett to sell it.
We'll be available, I promise.
Yes, it's a good pitch. But also my thing is I look forward to seeing my kids. I think about it every day. What are they going to do when they get older? And are they going to be able to, I don't want to say survive on their own, because they're raised so different than I was raised. And I'm hoping all the lessons I teach them, they think I'm a jerk now, but I want to see like what their careers are like, how they raise their kids. I look forward to seeing my kids, grandkids, and hopefully they're like me when they, I don't have to, hopefully, I hope they preach the same values, and I hope they understand down the road that I was just trying to help them. And I always tell them, guys, I'm not doing this to be a jerk. I'm doing this because I love you and I'm trying to teach you. But I look forward to that. I look forward to rebuilding the business. That's.
Well, Phil, I really want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been really fun chatting with you and learning more about your business and your history and your mindsets that took you to, building one of the larger exhibit companies out there with over 100 people and offices in 3 different states. We appreciate you and appreciate you coming on the show, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, Bill, and I hope I'm not the lowest viewed podcast on your series here.
We'll make sure of it. Even if I have to
All
keep
right.
logging on and rewatching it, we'll make sure.
All right, Bill.
All right. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Appreciate it.